Are you an established small business owner or aspiring entrepreneur? Would you like professional advice to help your business grow and succeed? Well, look no further. The Virgin Islands Small Business Development Center is the territory's #1 resource to move your business forward. Enjoy no-cost advising, low-cost training, and technical assistance from experts in both the public and private sectors. The VISBDC is nationally accredited and sustained by the University of the Virgin Islands and the U.S. Small Business Administration. Visit us at our locations on St. Thomas, St. John, or St. Croix, and follow us on social media at VISBDC. For easy access to all our training and networking events, be sure to join our newsletter and download the VISBDC app. The Virgin Islands Small Business Development Center, here to help your business start, grow, and succeed.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the VISBDC's hosting of The Ripple Effect, How Small Steps Lead to Large Wins. Today's session will help participants understand how small, consistent actions can accumulate to create significant achievements. The presenter will explore practical tips for making steady progress towards your business goals. I'll allow him this time to share his screen so you can see his PowerPoint while I formally introduce him. Today's lead presenter is Mr. Lanley Shazar. Lanley Shazar is a writer, speaker, and advocate with a passion for storytelling, empowerment, and community service. Raised in Bristol, Virginia, and now based in the U.S. Virgin Islands, he engages in civic and creative pursuits, working with organizations such as the American Red Cross and the VI Youth Advocacy Coalition. His background spans process engineering, global operations, and legislative leadership, but his true calling lies in the arts and social impact. An accomplished poet and columnist, Lanley has contributed to multiple anthologies, magazines, and newspapers, including his current column, The Lounge, in the St. Thomas Source. He has authored 7 books, covering poetry, self-improvement, and inspiration. Through the Casual Word, his YouTube talk show, podcast, and publishing platform, he fosters dialogue and uplifts voices in literature and personal growth. A collector of antique books and typewriters, Lanley finds inspiration in history, philosophy, and the written word. As an e-pastor of New Life International, he merges faith with action, believing service is a responsibility. His mission is clear: break stereotypes, cultivate awareness, and inspire transformation one word at a time. Here's a friendly reminder to put your questions in the chat, and it will be addressed by our presenter either directly in the chat or later during our question and answer segment. A copy of today's presentation will be attached to the post survey email sent after today's live event. We encourage you to take a few minutes after this training to fill out that survey that lets us know how we are doing. So without further ado, Mr. Shazar, the floor is yours.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you so very much. It's always a pleasure to be here, and thank you, everybody, for taking the time out of your day to be part of this presentation. We're going to get into the ripple effect, and we're going to talk specifically about not just the small steps, but we're going to talk about the human-centric side of business. For those of you who have been tapping into these presentations, you know that I come from a very person-focused area. There's tons of people out there who can give you all the applicable knowledge. There's textbooks, there's Google, of course, right? But I think one area that we often miss, and we see it in very successful businesses, and we're trying to translate that here in the territory, is the people. And not just the people you work with, the people that you may be having the opportunity to lead, but more importantly, the people that you serve. Your business is going to offer a service of some sort. So you want to make sure that those individuals, your clients, are at the center of what it is that you do and how you can create the opportunity to continue to grow and be successful. So that's just the title slide there. That's a great introduction. Thank you again for that, Miss Industrious. So, yep, I do a lot of different things. Currently, I work at BIT in project management. And we talk a lot about different areas of leadership. And one of the things that we talk about extensively here is also our personnel and our resources. We're a small agency. And so we talk a lot about what is it that we can do to encourage and to motivate the staff and to help them, right, overcome obstacles and be that conduit for their success as well as the organization's success. So today we're going to look at a couple of key points, understanding how ripple effect works in business. And then we're going to talk about building strong relationships with our customers, because customer service is something that is sorely lacking here in the territory. And I know that there are people who talk about it, and we've also got to be agents of change and figure out what is it that we need to do better and different. And that starts with you all, the people who have a small business, the people who are trying to launch a small business, the people who are on their entrepreneurial journey, and understanding that customer service is going to make or break whatever it is that you do. Even in the public sector, we serve the people and we serve the citizenry. And so if what we are doing is not helping them, then we are not fulfilling our mission. So even in the private sector, in the public sector, rather, we still have an obligation to make sure that the customers are satisfied, right? Our clients are satisfied, the citizens are satisfied. We're going to talk about empowering and engaging employees. We've talked a lot about that over the last few presentations about working with your team and building positive work environments. And so we're going to tackle that again today, because I think that's fundamental to everything that you're going to do is how do you get your team to be successful? How do you motivate your team? And how do you ensure that you've got the right team and that you understand what their needs are and what drives them, so that you all can continue to work and to be successful as individuals and as an organization. And then we also talk about community in this presentation. We've talked about the client and the customer and the service that you offer, but also understanding that you are part of a community, not just a community of business owners or people who maybe work in a business connected to other agencies or whatnot, but you are a community of people. Especially here in the territory, it's a small community. So you are part of that, and being involved in the community outside of what you provide to the community is going to be important to help build your business brand and build that reputation and build that public perception of you. And then, of course, we're going to talk about sustaining the growth through continuous improvement. If you guys saw any of my other presentations, we talk often about continuous improvement, because this has to be something that is part of the DNA of your operating model, is continuous improvement. You've got to be thinking about how often, and that's going to change based on what your service is, what your operating model is, what your staff and your resources look like. But you need to be establishing a routine where there is an assessment and an evaluation, and then there is action after that to continuously improve internally and externally. So let's look at the ripple effect in small business. So a lot of times we think that it's the big event that's going to make a change. We think it's the large scale action. We think it's the monumental movement, either internally or externally. Maybe we're trying to put on some big gala. We love to do that down here. Maybe it's some big fundraiser. But what I have seen, and I sit on a lot of boards and commissions, both in the States previously and here, is we don't plan very well, and then the execution is also poor. You have to be thinking about those small steps. Did we write a plan? Right? Have we identified what the goal is? Is that on paper somewhere? What is it that we're trying to accomplish? Now, that's for a particular event. As an organization, you talk about your business and your vision. Is that written down somewhere? Because that is the fundamental tenet of how you operate, right? That is kind of the blueprint in just a few words. So everything that you do, you have to ask yourself, does this align with our mission? Does this align with the vision? When you look at a particular event or something that, or a service that you're trying to offer, you have to ask yourself, does that service align? But also, does that does that service meet a need? And that need has to be something that is not just assumed, but studied. You know, poll your potential clients, get out in the community. We'll talk about that community event, the community involvement, and find out what the needs are. Because we have needs as individuals, and people who are entrepreneurs are saying, okay, if I feel this way, someone else feels this way, and I want to go out and make a difference. But then when you get into trying to understand what you want to do and what service you want to offer, what aid you want to lend, you have to look beyond yourself, because it's going to be a little bit different. You have a singular lens that you're looking through. So in order for it to be robust, in order for it to work, you've got to make sure that you're looking at it holistically through multiple lenses and multiple eyes. And this is part of that customer interaction, and getting that feedback and making sure that you're doing the small things that we'll talk about active listening. We'll talk about being able to make sure that you are meeting their needs, and that when they have a suggestion that you feel is meaningful, or if the multiple customers are suggesting the same thing, that's something that you need to really to take a look at and maybe implement. And then, of course, the employee engagement, right? These are the three major parts of the ripple effect, is making sure that you are helping your team be successful. And again, that's going to be small steps. It could be the flexible schedule that we talked about in the last presentation. It could be giving them the opportunity to work remotely. It could just be listening and taking in their input when it comes to planning activities or planning events, or maybe even the future direction of your organization or your company. One thing that I mentioned before was that we have a tendency to want the subject matter experts. We want the people who are the best in their field, and then we don't listen to anything they have to say. And that's a leadership mindset that has to change. So if you are trying to launch a business, or you're moving into this journey of entrepreneurship, remember that it's not always going to be your way or no way. Yes, you may have the ultimate say, but you are bringing on people who are the best or the subject matter experts because you need them to help you be successful. So it behooves us to make sure that we're listening. And so we'll talk mostly today about the customer and the employee, because those are the things where you're going to either be really successful, or you're going to be unsuccessful and maybe have to shutter your business, or pivot away from what you thought was going to be a dream opportunity for you. Customer service, improving customer service. And that could be something so simple as just being pleasant on the phone or pleasant in person. I can't tell you how often that you go somewhere. I think we've all experienced it down here, especially you walk into a store, and the two people are cussing each other out, and the manager's yelling at somebody else, or maybe it's quiet, but the moment you go up and good morning, good afternoon, it's an attitude, and they're popping their gum and they're sucking their teeth, and it makes you really have a really poor introduction into that business, into that store, or what have you, right? So that's a small step. Just working with your team on how to be pleasant, on how to be engaging, is a small step that makes a huge difference. I think that many of us can think of a really poor interaction in a business or in a restaurant, and then think about a really great one. And the thing that determines which direction it goes into is how the people in that establishment interact with you as the customer. So I cannot talk about that enough, and we're going to do a whole other presentation specifically on customer service coming up. But I think that we need to really make sure that no matter where we are in business, and this is true of the public sector, right? We have people who are calling in who have needs, who have issues, who are trying to figure out they have a problem of some sort, and they're calling us to hopefully develop or have a solution, right? I've always said this: if you don't like what you do, go do something else. And I know that sounds rudimentary, but I can't tell you how often you call an agency and the person on the other side of the phone has an attitude like they don't want to be there. This is the entire reason why you are employed, is to do this particular thing. It's customer service or some sort of interaction with the public. This is the reason why you have this job, why this job exists. So if it's not something that you want to do, and it's not something that you don't have to be particularly excited about, but understand how to differentiate between what's happening outside of work and what's happening at work, and put your customer service face on, so to speak, and help people, then you need to find something else to do. And that's something that we need to come to terms with as individuals. If you're always going to have an attitude about being at your job, then perhaps there's another job for you or another career opportunity for you. Likewise, if you're going to be always stressed out trying to build this brand and build this business to the fact that your team doesn't like dealing with you, then you need to think about the totality of the vision. You need to think about, maybe you're stretching yourself too thin, maybe you're doing too much, or maybe you just need to take a break and recalibrate. And we talk about that often, about making sure that you're pausing, that you're creating a good balance for yourself, because entrepreneurship can burn you out, and trying to build a business or start something from scratch can drive you crazy. Trying to start a nonprofit, you'll have gray hairs and be up all night, being upset and stressed out. So you got to make sure that you're providing balance for yourself as well as for your team. The other thing is your actual product or service, and listening to what the customer feedback is. Feedback loops are probably the most important thing that we have at our disposal that's absolutely free. Right? Feedback is free. Sometimes we don't want it. Sometimes it's unsolicited, but feedback is important, because this is how you get in touch with reality. Sometimes leaders have a view of what's happening that's unrelated to what's really going on. And sometimes in a business or in a service model, you have detached yourself from what is actually happening with your customer base, and they'll know it. They'll know when they're not being listened to. They'll know when they're not being heard. They'll know when they're not being considered, and you will begin to lose business. And again, that's that impact on customer loyalty. So we want to make sure that you are being aware. And again, you don't have to take everything and apply it. Not everything is going to work. Not everything is going to be good advice, but you at least need to take it and sift through it and determine what you can and cannot use, and what is really going to help impact your service model or the product that you have, or the way you interact with the public. So why does the human aspect matter? I said this in the last one. You can have the best product on the market. You can have the most efficient process that you can afford. You can have the greatest tools and the greatest AI and all these different things. But if you are not making sure that the people that work with you or work under you are balanced, satisfied to a degree, and given the opportunity to be their most successful selves in their roles, and on the other side of that, if you're not paying attention to what's happening on the outside of your business, and you're not seeing what the citizens or the customers or your clients need, and you're not listening, you're not going to be very successful. And so the human aspect is much more critical than we have given credit to in the past. In the industrial age, it was very much a um, assembly line way of looking at people just as products, right? I mean, everybody was a number. Anyone can do this job, and anyone can punch a clock, kind of thing. And we've carried that over the last few decades into even now, when we see different generations and how they function, we're still trying to apply that same operating model. And it's archaic, it's outdated. And so we've got to start really making sure that we tap into the needs and the aspirations and the goals of the people that we are working with and working for, and building those relationships and that positive culture. So we talked a lot about the positive work culture in the last presentation, but this is about a positive culture all around. So this is not just people enjoying working with you, whether it's collaboratively or as an employee, but also that it's a positive culture where individuals who interact with your organization outside of it, from a client base or a customer base or a citizen base, depending on your field, are going to enjoy those interactions. They're going to go back and say, man, I really like working with so and so. I really like working with that organization. I really enjoy the interaction and the conversation, the dialogue and the discussion. And that's going to continue to build your brand. And that's going to build a reputation and a brand identity that you can't control in terms of what people are going to think, um, as well as their perception. But what you can control is how you interact with them, so it's positive, right? Now, you're not going to be able to tell them, I want you to say this about my company. But as long as what's being done and the engagements are positive, what people are going to say about your company, your organization, or your service model is going to be positive. And so that's why we want to continue to build that positive culture. And it's going to leak in, it's going to start inside, and it's going to kind of leak outside and permeate around the organization, permeate around the ideology. It's going to permeate around the way people think and perceive when they hear your organization or they hear your name, or they hear that so and so works at this company. They're immediately going to be like, man, that's a great thing. That's a good job. That's a great place. That's a great opportunity, so on and so forth. So before we get into building strong relationships with customers in particular, I want to pause here. Does anybody have any questions, any comments? I thought I saw a couple of things in the chat, but I couldn't pull it up.
We don't have any questions at this time, but once we do, I will be sure to get those to you.
All right. Well, thank you guys very much. We're going to move right along to building strong relationships with customers. So, customer trust and loyalty. With the government being the largest employer, and we are all, many of us work in the government, but we're also obviously citizens and residents here of the territory. We understand explicitly right now the degrade in trust and loyalty to the service model from the government. And we understand that a lot of businesses are also feeling the brunt of that. And we really got to turn the tide. And turning the tide first is recognition that it is important. Now, I know there was a time growing up where the model was the customer's always right. That's not always the case. The customer's not always right. However, the customer is important. That's why you exist. That's why, whether you're public, private, whether it's service, whether it's entertainment, whether it's tourism, whatever it is that you operate, whatever sector you operate in, you exist to provide something to someone else. There is a customer, even if your customer's internal. For us here at BIT, our customer, our client, is the rest of the government, right? As well as the public. But our primary client is we have to deal with other agencies, right? So there's always going to be someone that you're offering something to that you have to support. And it's important to understand what they need, what they're looking for, and help them to solve their problems in order to get them to trust you first, and then get them to keep coming back, and to also suggest you to other people, right? So that's the breakdown of that, is making sure that you are listening. You probably hear me talk often about the feedback loop, but it's important to understand that you've got to make sure that you're hearing your clients and you're hearing your customers, and that what you believe to be a good thing is in fact a good thing based on the feedback that you're getting. Or what you believe to be a good thing that's working well may not be working at all. And you wouldn't know that until you heard back from your client base. And then you can pivot and make an adjustment and adapt and improve. That's that continuous improvement model. One of the first presentations I gave was on effective communication, and you guys can go back and check that out. I believe that's still available, but if not, I think Miss Industrious has that file there, and you guys can look at some of those strategies, particularly for communication. But in a nutshell, it's just active listening and being very clear about what it is you want to say. Now, here I want to stop and mention that many times, whether it's formal or informal communication, we just start talking and we haven't even determined what we want the desired outcome to be yet. So clear messaging, whether it's oral, written, social media, means that you need to know what you are trying to communicate and also the desired outcome of that communication before you just start talking. And that's something that we should do more often, is taking that moment to say, okay, before I say anything, what is it that I want to say? How's it going to impact the nature of the conversation? And also, what is the outcome? What do I want to see happen once I've said whatever it is that I'm getting ready to say? Making sure that that communication is clear in your mind, and that way it becomes clear when you actually express it. And active listening, of course, is it's more than just paying attention. I don't want to oversimplify it, but it really is paying attention. There's strategies to that, repeating what people say, saying things such as, okay, just to be sure you said da da da, and making sure that people feel like you are paying attention, that you are really listening to what they have to say. And of course, being responsive. So that's again that feedback loop. So when people have a need, when they have an issue, when they have a problem, then you address that. But also let me say this: when things are going well and people are singing your praises, so to speak, then this is not the time to go and upend your entire operating model. We see that a lot where we'll use McDonald's for an example, right? There's a particular sandwich that's doing great. Everybody loves the sandwich. And then all of a sudden it's, well, we're not offering that sandwich anymore. Why? Would you ask anybody? I mean, everybody's buying the sandwich, right? Of course, we don't have access to the internal stuff, but that's just a silly example of, if you are the person who's getting good feedback and positive commentary on a particular service model, a particular product, or something that you're doing very, very well, then there's no need to completely upend it. Now, there's always room for improvement upon something, and that's different. But you don't have to go back to the drawing board if something's working well. So I also want to make sure that we put that in this conversation, is that being responsive also means if it's working, because kind of the if it's broke, don't fix it. Now, I don't want to apply that to a lot of things that we're doing on island, because a lot of stuff we're doing out of pure laziness. And we're saying it's not broken, but it is indeed exceptionally broken. We just don't want to fix it. Whole other conversation. But when things are going well, that's where this applies. If it's not broken, there's nothing to fix. If it's going well, you can always improve as technology improves, or maybe your staffing improves, or your resource allocation improves. Those things will enhance the service or the product. There's no reason to go and change everything up if things are going well. So that's also a part of being responsive, because that will also lose you customers. If people are clamoring for something and then you take it off as a service, or you take it off as a product, or you remove it completely, that's going to lose you some clients and some customers. So be cognizant of that as well. This is just a little bit more information about that being responsive and that feedback, right? Tailored offerings. Not everybody can do this. Not everybody can look at it and say, okay, we can offer all these different things based on all the input that we've gotten, but you can do a few of these things, maybe for a group of people. So if you have something that is a service, and you've got the broad majority of individuals like this part of your service, then you can continue to offer that. And maybe there's another segment, substantial segment, that likes something a little bit different. Well, then that makes sense to try and do something a little bit more tailored for that. But if you're talking about trying to individualize every single person's experience, well, that's typically not feasible and it's not efficient. So, make sure that you have a good grasp on the demographics when you talk about tailoring certain aspects of your business or your service or your product, and make sure that when you do that, that it's relevant to the what you're getting in that feedback loop, right? So that's the relevance to the interaction, that you're not just customizing for the sake of customization. You're actually making sure that it fits based on the information that you've been receiving from your customers, your clients. And also, sometimes we talk about the internal operations. Sometimes you've got to tailor certain aspects of your internal operations based on the way that your team operates, and the things that your team needs. And you can't just broad brush, uh, whether it's your incentives, or whether it's individualized opportunities, trainings, and the like. Maybe you can do a few things after you've identified the overarching theme of what the needs are or what the interests are of your team, then you can offer some things that will service most of those, but not every one. Even internally, complete customization and individualizing everything is not going to be a road to success. But when you can do it and do it well, you're going to get loyalty from your team, loyalty from your people you collaborate, your colleagues, and of course, loyalty from your customers as well. So I'll stop right here. Does anyone have any questions, any comments? All right. Hearing none, we'll keep moving forward. We'll talk about empowering and engaging employees. So when you talk about building a house or building anything, you got to start with the foundation. And the blueprint is you, the person who's come up with the idea and said, I'd like to start this business or go out on this venture. You are the blueprint. The foundation is going to be the team that you select to create that vision and that mission around. And so you've got to make sure that you create an environment that breeds success. I was at a conference and one of the presenters um, put a quote up from another presentation from a Canadian company, and I can't remember who said the quote, but it said that if you are lucky enough or fortunate enough to be someone's employer, then you have a moral and ethical obligation to make sure that they enjoy coming to work for you every day. That is something else that we need to take very seriously, especially in the public sector, and I would say here in the territory, is that it's not just, again, this is that industrial mindset. Anybody can do this job. Well, not everybody can do this job, or people will be knocking down your door to be hired. Not everybody could do this job, or you wouldn't have a shortage of staff. So we can't dismiss and simplify people down to just a number or a figure, and understand that you got to build a foundation that people want to be part of. And that starts with creating that positive work environment. And that's going to, the morale and the productivity, all of that happens when you have a positive work environment, an environment where people feel like they are valued and they feel like they are heard and they are considered and they matter, to be very frank. We've got a lot of people who work in jobs who have unique skill sets, who have the education, who have the experience, who are just quiet quitting and just coming into work, doing the bare minimum, if anything at all, because leadership doesn't recognize that they even exist, first of all, and that they have skills and talent. And even though this goes back to the whole idea of hiring your subject matter experts and not listening to them, so they bring these people in and then they just dismiss everything they say, and they silence them in meetings, or they override their ideas or decision making. Right? When there's multiple tiers of leadership, you've got some leaders who will override their other leaders' decision making, and therefore rendering them to feel as though, why am I even here if I can't make any decisions? And I will say that this is something we talk about autonomy, and this is something that goes all the way down, I would say, to even the person in the cleaning service aspect, right? Let's say you've got some large organization and you've got your cleaning staff. Even the cleaning staff should have the autonomy to go into their work environment and assess where they should start and go about their day the most efficient and productive way that they know how, leading to them being happier about doing it. A better job's going to be done, and it's going to be done efficiently. So as you work your way up across all tiers of employee and management levels, giving people the autonomy to make decisions within the scope of their role really helps boost that morale, and gives them a sense of ownership of the direction, even though it might be small, that they're going to take their slice of the organization. So here's some things you can consider when we talk about rewards and recognition. One of the things that came up in another class that I was taking about motivating people as a leader University of Michigan, is understanding extrinsic and intrinsic motivations. So your intrinsic motivations are going to be the things that make you feel good, right? Is it something that gives you gratification or satisfaction? Is it, being heard, being listened to? Is it, having the opportunity to lead a program or lead a project? The extrinsic is going to be the salary, the time off, the vacations, right? That's going to be that. And you got to figure out how your team is motivated overall. Again, you cannot individualize everything, but maybe it's a combination. Maybe it's hybrid. Maybe you've got some people who respond really, really well to that hybrid work environment and that flexible schedule and having that time off and that ability to work remotely. And then maybe you have people who really respond to something so simple as a certificate or a little award ceremony. It could be like a little trophy. Hey, man, thank you. You're a number one salesperson for the day. Or you've got the highest service numbers. We want to say thank you. Right. I mean, it may sound silly, but some people really respond well to that. So you have to identify what it is that makes your team tick and makes the people that you work with want to work, and then figure out a way to boost that. So, again, it's not going to be all things to all people. Not one single way is going to work for everybody. But if you can do maybe a combination of things, and we touched on that in the last presentation, a combination of things after you've kind of done an assessment will really yield positive results because your team will feel valued. A lot of people go into a job and they are cranking out great work and they are doing awesome things. And not so much as a thank you, I see you doing great work, I appreciate what you do for us, comes from their leadership. And that a lot of times goes a long way with people. And it also helps to boost that positive work environment and that opportunity and that space for growth and improvement. And speaking about growth, encouraging professional growth is another way that people can feel valued. Sending people to trainings, giving them opportunities to grow. I know, especially in public sector, you can't always financially reward someone as they get degrees and certifications and whatnot. But, those can often come with other areas of leadership and other ways where they can showcase what they've learned and showcase that talent. So there's opportunity to do that as well. And there's a lot of things that are free. A lot of stuff is free. So it doesn't always have to be a budget thing. We always think about who's going to pay for that. Where's the money going to come from? But there's a lot of free certifications, free classes, free trainings that will improve someone's day-to-day operations, how they do their daily tasks, make them more efficient, make it easier and less stressful for them, and also improve the overall productivity of the office or the organization. So I encourage you to take a look and encourage your employees to take a look. Encourage your employees to go and find some resources. Or if you're one of those proactive, progressive leaders, you build a list and say, hey guys, just so you know, there's all these different training opportunities. We are more than excited and we support anything that you guys do to improve your professional and personal careers. And we stand behind that, right? And allow them to do that and come back with more information. I guarantee you that it's going to be a positive benefit for your organization and your team. They're going to come back with stuff that no one had ever thought of. They're going to come back with new and broadened perspectives and horizons, and they're going to be able to contribute that almost immediately to the operations. So encourage that and help them find ways to improve themselves and continue to grow. That way they don't feel stagnant. And that stagnation can also lead to feeling as though they don't matter and that they are neglected and dismissed within the organization. So some of those individuals maybe just need a little bit of a push in terms of offering something for them to learn something new. I'll stop there. You have any other questions or comments so far? All right, hearing none. We're going to get into another unique aspect of having a business or public sector, of course, wherever you operate, is that community involvement. And again, this is outside of what you do, right? As an individual, as an organization, as an agency, as uh, a nonprofit, right? This is outside of what you do, what service you provide, what you offer, what product. This is about whether as an individual representing your organization or as a team and your whole organization going out and getting into the community. There's a lot of grassroots organizations that are doing great work and trying to fill needs and trying to close gaps, and having the organization, any organization, show up to support, whether it's volunteering or maybe there's a financial way that they can support, or maybe it's just having those hands, or maybe your service or your product is something that you can donate to the opportunity for other people to use. Maybe that's the way that you do it, right? You got to figure out what that looks like for your operating model. But it's important because, again, here in the territory, especially, it is a small community. And so people notice if you never show up for things. People notice if your name or your organization is never on a banner anywhere. People notice when you say no to everything. And that also is going to impact the relationship that you have with the people that you are serving, or the product, or maybe you're just trying to, build your brand, your identity. That's all going to have an impact on that. So the benefits are going to be just building goodwill, and goodwill goes a long way. There's a gentleman that I manage back in Virginia, and we do a very large um, showcase for Latin dance and some different things, because it's a very rural area, not really exposed to different cultures. And so we've been putting this on for the last couple of years, but a lot of the conversations that we have are, how do we build goodwill? And sometimes that is that donation of time, it's that donation of service, it's that donation of a product, it's showing up and supporting someone else's event, it's showing up and supporting someone else's engagement, whether you're just in the crowd, or maybe you've been asked to come and speak or present, or maybe you've been asked to come and do something fun with the youth, but whatever it looks like, building that goodwill is going to help you continue to attract new clients, new customers, new networks, and also help build the entire resiliency of the community. Right now, we hear this term about operating in silos. It's fragmented. Our nonprofits are fragmented. Our for-profits are fragmented. The public sector is fragmented. And so we are all just blinders on, without any consideration for how what we do affects other agencies or other organizations or other people in the community. And we've got to really start changing that mindset, right? As it says here, that mutual support. It's a mindset that says, something that we're doing could benefit other people. One thing that I say is that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, but you can always add more spokes, and you can make that wheel much more difficult to break. And by doing so, you end up with a wheel that's going to really assist in working with a lot of individuals and supporting the community in a major way. So if you do something very well, do that thing very well, and let someone else do another side of that. And then you all just continue to collaborate and continue to pull all these resources in, because we're really all vying for the same 88,000 people. So it doesn't make any sense to try and be competitive when we could be collaborative and work together so that everybody wins. So that's those, right? Supporting those initiatives. We just talked about that. That's what other people are doing. Even, and this is going to sound counterintuitive, but I will say this: even if something another organization or another company is doing may be competition in terms of the sector that you all operate in, does not mean that they're an enemy. It doesn't mean that you're trying to see them fail. It doesn't mean that you're trying to destroy them. You will likely have something that they don't have, and vice versa. It is okay to support one another and show up to one another's initiatives, and because you operate in the same sector. And there could be times when you are overloaded and you've got a backlog, and you can refer them to that who would have been competition. And the same will go back and forth. And now all of a sudden you've built a partnership and a bridge where there was a moat. So something to be considerate of, working together and supporting what's happening, and then just supporting what's happening locally in a larger area, in a bigger city, metropolitan area, a lot of people are doing stuff. You've got individuals, like we've said, we've got, nonprofits and grassroots. And so as an established organization, as an established business or company, get out in the community, because it's not only generates that goodwill, it improves your reputation, it builds that continuity, but it also gives you a pulse on what's happening. So maybe you've been trying to figure out, okay, we've got some things that are going really well, but we want to expand. What is it that we want to do next? Getting out in the community is going to tell you immediately what your next step should be. What is your next service offering? What is your next product offering? Because you now have firsthand experience and firsthand knowledge of what the need looks like. What is that gap that needs to be filled? What is that service that you want to offer? What is the thing that people are missing and clamoring for that you may be able to provide? Right. Again, it won't be an assumption. It'll be data driven based on experience and based on what you're gathering from the community. Again, feedback loop. So with the community alliances, that's just basically wrapping up everything we've been talking about. Everybody's going to win when you work together as a community. And everybody's going to continue to build that community. And the ripple effect is that it's going to continue to expand and expand and expand. And there's going to be more opportunities. There's going to be bigger networks. There's going to be larger um, investment opportunities into your business for you to invest in other things. So that's the nature of how we see the expansion of the ripple effect. If we look at what we've talked about thus far, we look at the fact that it starts with you, the individual. You are the nucleus, you are the ideation of whatever is going to happen. That is the pebble in the pond, right? The next ripple is going to be the team. How you assemble that team. How does that team feel? What is that team doing? What is our mission, our vision? What are our goals? How do we align ourselves with what's going on? And then you move outside. Your next ripple is going to be your clients. Your next ripple is going to be your customers and the people that you're trying to serve or help. And then beyond that is going to be this community alliance. And so you see, starting with you and how you build yourself and how you build your team is going to be directly related to what type of ripple. You see, there's going to be a ripple no matter what. There's going to be an effect no matter what. Now, do you want to be positive or negative? Depends on how you determine what you want to do as an individual and with your team. Right? We've all, and we are currently experiencing the ripple effects of negative leadership, of poor decision making, of poor fiscal responsibility. We are currently in the throes from the federal level and the local level. We are experiencing the ripple effects of poor management and decision making and having a non-interest in the people and not doing what's right by the people that you're called to serve. So we see that. That is a ripple effect, but it's been negative and it's been quite catastrophic in nature in a lot of places. So for us here, everybody's watching this and anybody who will check this out later, you get to determine what type of impact you're going to have, what type of ripple you're going to create in your community. Now, after you've gotten all that, and this is a lot to take in, we often talk about the continuous improvement. Being adaptable and resilient, we talked about pivoting. It is going to be related to how well you can navigate your challenges and turn them into opportunities, right? So sometimes you're going to have a challenge and it's going to create an opportunity. Sometimes you're going to have a challenge that's really something you've got to just fix, right? It's a problem internally or externally. But being creative and being able to adapt, right? That's also a ripple effect. We talk about a positive work culture and a work environment, right? Being innovative, being positive, being creative, allowing room for people to figure out different things and think outside the box is a ripple effect that will lead to more people speaking up. More eyes, more minds, more ideas mean more solutions. So you want to make sure that your continuous improvement process is inclusive of your team. Your team is in the trenches. You are typically in a leadership capacity. You are detached from what's happening on the ground because you have a different set of responsibilities. So when you talk about how you have to adapt, how you have to pivot, how you have to move, or maybe you just want to expand and you want to change and you want to grow and evolve. Well, you're going to need the team who's doing the work every day to be at the table. You need the team to come and sit down and say, these are things that we're seeing. This is what we're experiencing. This is the feedback that we're getting in order to create the roadmap for what the future looks like. And the feedback, I've been talking about this entire presentation, but the feedback is critical because this is where you're going to get a clear understanding of what's working and what's not working. And again, it's going to be data driven. This is not going to be what you think is happening. This is going to be, then the data is going to be the emotion of your team. It's going to be the perception and the reputation that you hear about yourself and your organization, your agency, or your business. Right? And it's going to be the opportunity for you to take those small steps. And it's the iterative, as it says here, way that you improve, right? Iteration just means you take one step at a time, right? And you evaluate at each step, right? So you assess it and you evaluate it, you make some changes, and then you execute and you do that again. And that's a continuous process. That is the continuum of improvement itself. You assess and you evaluate, and then you make your adjustments, you make your changes and your refinements, and then you execute, right? When you get that plan together, you execute that plan, and then you go back to drawing board and say, okay, team, what worked? What didn't work? What did we like? What didn't we like? What do we think we need to improve? What are we keeping? What are we removing? What are we exchanging? And you go through that process, and you go through that process many, 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 many times. You never get to a place where you've just arrived, right? I mean, think about Amazon, and as successful as Amazon has been, I just read an article this morning that they're getting ready to expand their delivery operations to rural areas and territories and places that have been underserved. So there is exactly that continuous improvement model. We can see that happen right before our eyes. Now, as successful as they have been, they have cornered the market on shopping digitally and delivery service and on time and 2-day shipping and all these different things, right? They have been on the forefront of all of that. And even with that level of success, there's still room for improvement. So never think you're going to get to a place where this is the best it's ever going to be. It's not. Why? Because you're going to have a change in people. There's going to be a change in regulation and policy. There's going to be a change in technology. There's going to be a change in the way that the community feels about what's happening or what you're doing. So there's going to be some things that are evolutionary. And because of that, you're always going to be in a space where you can continually assess and improve what it is that you're doing. And leave you guys with the long-term vision and planning. Right? We here in the territory, we are in a firefight a lot of times. We're putting out fires every day, and that leaves very little room to be able to look at a long range plan and a strategic plan and a roadmap. But if you are just starting out, I would encourage you to look at that 1 year, 5 year, 10-year plan. Now you might be saying, my gosh, 10 years is a long way away, but it's going to creep up on you before you know it. And if you're successful, it's going to happen even faster. So make sure that you're looking at what it is that you want to be and where you want to go over time. With that and your strategic process, we talk about risk quite often, right? Identify, and this is an exercise that I really encourage everyone to take serious. And bring your team in. Identify potential risk. Identify what could happen, and then make sure you have a mitigation strategy in place. Build that out, write that down. If this happens, we're going to do this, this, and this. If it never happens, outstanding. But what you don't want to be is caught unaware. You don't want to have something happen and you have no idea how to address it, have no idea how to fix it. You have no idea what to do next. Now, you're not going to be able to think of everything, but between a whole lot of minds and multiple eyes and multiple lived experiences, you should come up with a decent list of what I would consider your most priority risk. And there's other things, there's other tools that you can look at. There's matrices that will allow you to rate and categorize your risk. You can classify them. You can give them a priority level, red, yellow, green. Is it likely to happen? Is it not likely to happen? If it does, what's the level of impact? Lots of tools like that exist, but at least think about what could possibly go wrong and have something in place to address it. Because it's going to be a lot of things that are going to be unexpected, but unexpected doesn't mean unknown. Now, I won't put that out. Just because you didn't expect it to happen doesn't mean it came out of blue air and we didn't see the writing on the wall, so to speak, right? When we talk about navigating the market, navigating the community, there's going to be precursors. There's going to be red flags. You're going to hear the grumblings. This is why it's important to have your pulse on what's happening in the community. You're going to be hearing some things. The feedback's important, right? You're going to be knowing some things. There's going to be something in the atmosphere. It's there. You just have to be tuned in and tapped into it, right? So just because it wasn't expected doesn't mean it was unknown. So you may not think it's going to happen to you. That's unexpected. But unknown means that you never saw it coming. And that's what's inexcusable when you're trying to go into business. It's really inexcusable when you are operating at a leadership perspective and a leadership model. Your job is to be looking out there and saying, okay, what does all this look like that's happening? What are the implications? How does that affect us? What's the timeline? What is it that we have to do? How do we get prepared for it? If it happens, what do we do next? Right? That's what your leadership. And if you are in a position of any level of leadership, that applies to you. Even if you are a small team and you're a small division in a small part of an agency, you need to be looking long term, looking at what's happening with the policy, looking what's happening in your organization. Is there leadership change? Is there policy change? Is some other things happening? And you say, okay, how's this going to affect my department? That's your job, right? Risk management and looking out for the rest of your team so that you guys can continue to adapt and evolve, pivot, and be successful. So again, guys, just because it was unexpected doesn't mean it was unknown. Make sure you're paying attention. I'll leave you with three final thoughts, really. Is that one from Victoria Miranda says to think that everything you do has a ripple effect, that every word you speak, every action that you make affects other people and the planet. And then, of course, Barack Obama said acts of sacrifice and decency without regard to what's in it for you create a ripple effect, ones that lift up families and communities that spread opportunity. And then, of course, my favorite quote is a dream without action is just a wish. So if you want to be successful, if you want some things to change in your organization, if you want some things to manifest, if you're trying to do some things differently, there's action behind it. We've talked a lot about the different things you can do. Get into your community. You can network with people. You can build your plan, write those strategies down, build out that risk assessment. Make sure you're tapping into your team, identifying what's going on with them. Make sure you're creating a positive work environment, that you're encouraging them to grow, encouraging them to develop, that you are helping them, that you're removing obstacles, right? This is all the work. And this is the action that allows you to turn something into a great success, no matter what sector, no matter where you're operating. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for your time and for your attention today. I will turn it back over to Miss Industrious, and then we will open the floor up for questions and comments. I'm not sure, is she still there? All right. Well, we wait for her to return. We can. I'm looking at the comments now. Thank you guys so much for your feedback and for your compliments. I really appreciate that. Does anyone have any questions? Just the floor is open. We've got some time. If you want to raise your hand, and go ahead and ask your question or have a comment, this is for you all. All right, guys. I'm just looking at your comments. I appreciate you guys. Yeah, Karen, I was just reading about Amazon and using more AI, but it's less employees in a very specific role. It's their data and analytics, right? Because obviously the large language models can crunch that data in fractions of a second. And they're going to be using that to help identify those areas of need and those places that have been underserved. So it's not really going to be like a mass reduction, but it is going to be a very specific reduction in staffing for people that were doing some analytics that obviously these large language models can do. You know, they can do terabytes of information in seconds. So and that's where we are. The idea is that there are still going to be individuals who are going to be in need of not just validating the information, but also inputting the data that needs to be sifted through. So there's still going to be some people, right? AI is a great tool, and we'll go ahead and put this out there. I've taken a lot of classes on AI as part of what I have to do for VIT. I think I mentioned this in the last presentation, but it's only going to get you 80% there, right? 80% to the finished product. You're still going to have to validate it. You're still going to have to verify it. You're still going to have to fact check it. And then you still got to finish whatever it is that you're asking it to do, right? So if you're developing a presentation, or if you're writing a document, or if you're preparing your dissertation, like there's still work that you have to do. We're not at a place where it's going to replace human thought. It's not going to replace ingenuity, and it's not going to replace the need for it to be verified. So I hope that assuages anybody's like large scale concern that they're going to be out of a job in 2 years. That's highly unlikely, because large language models are built on data, and they have to be trained. Yeah, exactly right. So what ends up happening, and what has happened thus far, is a lot of the biases that are being generated, the outputs, is because the data was biased. So when they're inputting information, if it's not completely pure and clean and objective, then you're going to end up with biased outputs. And we're already seeing some of that. So you guys probably seen some of the stories and some of the things that are happening with like Copilot and ChatGPT and some of the stuff that they've been saying when you ask certain prompts and questions. And then the other side about prompting is that there's an entire concept called prompt engineering. And this is why it's not going to replace people just yet, because not only do you have to train it on a large scale, but the output that you want is going to be dependent on you knowing what you want it to display, or what that desired outcome looks like, and actually coaching the whatever system you're using, whatever application. You have to coach it. So prompt engineering is an entire class by itself, where you learn how to get to the place where you have an outcome or an output that you like to work with, right? Many of us think we're just going to put in something, one or two sentences, and we're going to get exactly what we want, and we're not. So there's ways to do that iteratively, but then if you really have a good grasp of what you needed to work with, then a lot of my prompts are a paragraph long. I give it context, I give it examples, I give it what my experience has been like based on what I'm trying to have it output. And then it's still not going to be exactly what I want, but it does get me a lot closer than just saying, hey, make me this or write me that. So a couple of things to give you guys, and that stuff is free too. Prompt engineering. There's lots of classes on that. You guys can learn how to prompt if you're using large language models, generative or agentic AI. There's lots of ways to learn how to prompt, and to get the absolute most out of those applications. So I don't have any of that at my disposal currently, but if anybody has issues trying to find trainings on that, please let me know. Yeah, you're exactly right. A lot of times you can tell immediately. People were worried about plagiarism and not being, fully licensed in terms of their creativity. But if you know somebody and you've been working with somebody, you know how they write, you know how they speak, you know how they move, and you're going to know immediately if if someone didn't actually write something, you know. So yeah, there's always going to be ways to check against that. And it's not that it's a bad tool. The thing that I think that people, they want to use it in a way to not have to work. And really, it's just a way to help you get more time, right? That's what it does best, is that it saves you time. You can build a quick foundation instead of having to start everything from scratch. You can consolidate and review data in seconds versus taking it all day long to look for anomalies. So that's what it's really good for. And that's what it's good at, because that's very black and white type of activities and tasks. So yes, don't be afraid. It's really a great tool. It's really going to be something that I think, as long as we continue to use it correctly, of course, it's going to benefit a lot of people, and you're not going to get away from it. It's baked into everything now. So, embrace it to an extent, and use it where you can. So, guys, I am out of time. I am unsure if Miss Industrious is still on with us. But I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'll put my information back up real quick before I do that, guys. So again, um, I am available for in-person workshops and trainings, presentations, or I can do them virtually, of course. But if you want me to work with just your team or your division, we can definitely do that. Leadership, certainly more than happy to sit down and have conversations with leadership, talk about different aspects. So if you guys are interested, shoot me an email. You can give me a phone call. I'm super responsive, and we can do a discovery call to figure out, what it is that you want me to address or to tackle with your team, or the leadership team. So thank you guys again. Hope you have a great rest of your day. I'm going to stop sharing here. And I am going to bid you all adieu. So thank you so much. And like Miss Industrious said, please give your feedback. I think there's going to be a brief survey. And hope to see you guys at the next one. I know there's some other ones coming up. I know that I'll be in July. We got to set the date, but in July, I'll be doing one that is solely focused on customer service. So looking forward to seeing everybody there. Guys, have a great day. Thank you.